Good morning. Well, I'm going to start with a little bit of my personal story. This says 3 decades. 3 decades ago, I was an amateur astronomer concerned about light pollution and not doing too much about it. But 2 decades ago, I was a young park ranger at Pinnacles National Monument in California, now a national park. And I was coming back from a night patrol, stopped to take in the sky, and there was this new bright light dome on the horizon. The prison nearby had installed some new lights and had affected my sky. So I got on the listserv and spoke to my fellow rangers and said, well, what can I do about this? And a lot of people said, I don't know, but when you find out, let me know. And so I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a strike team, a night skies team in the Park Service, and we're going to figure out how to measure light pollution. And so we got a small grant, and the first thing someone says to me upon getting that grant says, oh, you're going to need to talk to Dan DeRisco if you're going to pull this off. So I did. And then I knew that I had to talk to IDA if I was going to pull this off as well. Over time, I met many of you in this room. I met planners, park interpreters, lighting engineers, lighting manufacturers, artists, city planners, epidemiologists, and through this journey began to develop a lot of what you're going to see here in this presentation. And what I'm going to try to put together for you here is a work in progress. Others have started this strategy. I moved it along, and some of you are going to finish it. So I'm going to try to condense 3 decades into key ingredients of success. There's a lot of things you should be doing, but I'm going to try to indicate what are the things that you have to be doing. I'm also going to talk about when we have fallen short, why have we fallen short. This is going to be based on my own experiences. I also sent out a survey prior to this talk, got some great feedback on the survey, and then hopefully there's some time at the end of this talk for you to contribute, add, subtract, and help shape this. So I have a very simple model I would like to posit here, and that is citizen motivation and conservation action, these 2 orbs on the screen in front of you. Motivation leads to action, and action provides further motivation. These are the yin and the yang of dark sky conservation. Yesterday's theme was about advocacy and building awareness. Today is about action, protecting the night. So this is a cyclical process. Wash, rinse, and repeat. So why are both of these elements important? And I'm going to steal something from Sun Tzu here with a paraphrase, and that is, citizen motivation without focused conservation action is the slowest road to success. Action without citizen motivation is the noise before defeat. So I'm going to present 4 key ingredients for citizen motivation and 4 for conservation action. Here we go. Number 1, connecting people with the night. We heard a lot about this. It can be summed up in a couple of concepts. One is nature deficit disorder. Kids grow up today. This is from Richard Louv's book. It's an excellent book. People are disconnected. You may have been connected at one point, but now you're like the rest of them, the millennials, and you look at your screen all the time. You don't go out at night. You watch TV. Whatever it is, we are disconnected from nature. The other is environmental generational amnesia, this concept from Peter Kahn, which is, you probably forgot how good it used to be. And over time, you start to lose trust in those emotions that you felt. Those emotions endure, but they dim with time. So people need to be, people are isolated. So if you want to motivate them, you need to connect them. They need to feel an identity through the night. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to do this. Cultural heritage, beauty, art and literature, astronomy, spirituality, wildlife, and other aspects of nature. Some of these are on the emotional channel. Some of these are on the intellectual or logical channel. Some cross over. So people need to cultivate identity through a connection of their own personal interest or their own values. They need to see themselves in your vision. So when you go about starting the process of motivating people, don't just pick one of these. Don't just pick two of these. All of these are fertile grounds for that connection. Cultural heritage, the first one listed there, is often overlooked, but it can be a powerful ally as it is loaded with value. So in 2006, I was asked as a park scientist to go to Kanab, Utah, and try to convince them, talk to them about a lighting ordinance. So this is southern Utah, a very conservative area. I wasn't the first dark sky advocate to march in there and get shot down. In fact, there had already been some discussion in the town, and someone had written a letter to the editor about how this was, people are going to trample my personal freedoms on my ability to have a light in my yard. And one of these letters to the editor was by the local hero, Sam Jackson. He was also a cowboy poet. So when preparing my talk, I looked at his cowboy poetry, and I found this. And I'll let you read this here as soon as it comes up. The view. So, wow. Okay, so the first thing I did is start my presentation with Sam Jackson's poetry. With this exact picture. And I just talked about the night sky in terms of the nighttime view. I didn't mention constellations or anything. I hitched my wagon to something that they already felt affinity for. I didn't have to create that affinity. I just added to it. It was much easier. So I mentioned Dan Dorisco, my right-hand scientist for the National Park Service Night Skies program. And he used to always say, we'd be out there in the middle of the night, and he's like, people just have to see this. People need to see this for themselves. It's the first-hand view of the night sky that's just so motivational. And I agree. If you can get children, adults out under the night sky, this can be your most powerful tool. It doesn't have to be about astronomy, but just into the night, let me call it. So, night sky festivals. When I was with the National Park Service, we embarked on an effort to see these all over the country, and many of them are still going strong today. So, the emphasis of these festivals was on the multiple aspects of connecting with the night. The cultural heritage, the astronomy, the spiritual, the art and literature, the whole gamut. This separated a night sky festival from just a star party that was primarily focused on astronomy. So for many, the night is a foreign land, and they need a guide, perhaps an ambassador, to lead them into that terrain. So night sky ambassadors come in many forms. Amateur astronomers, professional educators, IDA dark sky delegates, sky rangers, master astronomers, astro VIPs. Who here has been one of those or has worked with one of those? I guess about half the hands in the room. So this is an army that is part of this movement. Beginning in 2006, the National Park Service did a training program for people to become these night sky ambassadors, or whatever you call them. It was state park rangers and county park rangers and naturalists and national park rangers and international park rangers came to these. So hundreds of people graduated through these programs. Many of them ended up writing dark sky park applications that have been successful since. So, in aggregate, the people that are reached through these activities is on par with the largest science museums in the world. Right? So this is fairly scalable. Half of you in the room were touched by this. So this is one thing that has been part of the success. But you can't always, get people out into the night. There are some really good substitutes, however. You can reach people who reach people. News media, filmmakers and writers, and community leaders. As we get more and more urban, work in more and more urban areas, we probably rely more and more on this tool as opposed to the tool of a firsthand experience under the night. Motivation number 2, find an icon. Okay, an identifiable cue to trigger this container of emotions. All right, it can be a charismatic landscape, a charismatic animal. All right, it can be a human work or story. It can be a lighthouse. It can be a Native American tale. So again, what we're looking for is something that the people already have an affinity for. And we're just adding to that. Illustrations. Okay, so how many of you have been moved by one of Tyler Nordgren's posters? Right? Or have one in your home? Sure. I mean, some of these images are incredibly powerful and endure as a symbol. Okay? Raise your hand if you've seen one of these signs, or perhaps put one up. All right? When you drive through Flagstaff, you see that First International Dark Sky City. What the heck is that? I mean, these are powerful icons. And it can be as simple as a road sign. Wildlife. How many people use wildlife in their programs as an icon? Yeah. So I was, the Night Sky team went out to agate fossil beds, and one ranger was really interested in us coming. The others were like, we're a paleontology park? Why are you here? And I got to talking about him, and they weren't that excited about night skies, but I happened to mention, fireflies, that, things like fireflies are affected too. And they're like, oh, we have fireflies. We love our fireflies here. The fireflies are going away. What's up with that? And I was like, oh boy, you just found your icon. Okay, so again, something that people have an affinity for or can find sanctity in. And then photographs, all right? How many of you have used one of these 3 photographs in your presentations? All right? Probably over and over again. And so they can be very powerful. And just a little bit more about photographs. So, Hubble was immensely successful. We got images, but the better these images got, the more they were cut out of the night sky. In fact, there's even they didn't even bother to fill in the frame. NASA, right? They're like, that doesn't matter. But then there was a reversal of this trend. There was digital photography and photographers like Wally Paholka, who, one of these pictures was Time Picture of the Year, but put the sky with the landscape. And all of a sudden the sky was grounded again. It wasn't just the commons, it was like, that is the sky above Joshua Tree. So a lot of our success is because of these photographers, of bringing the sky into a charismatic landscape. Citizen motivation number 3. Okay, you need to lend urgency and credibility to what you're trying to say. And we do that through data. Imagery. We talk about the consequences for plants and animals. So what we're trying to show is that things are changing. We want to show that there's mortality in birds or confused sea turtles. We want to be able to provide visualizations. how far light pollution can go. It doesn't have to be terribly quantitative, but it has to be compelling and credible. Okay, number 4, articulating a grand vision. I know there were times we were sometimes afraid of doing this, but I really think this inspires people. So you want to try to link what's going on with people's porch lights, with their local community, to something larger. Your grand vision should incorporate this icon, whatever you have chosen, whether that's a photograph or a symbol or an animal. You want to always encourage people through the concept that the night sky is 100% recoverable. And then something you may have heard only recently, sky sheds. I used to call these light sheds. Sky sheds is a better name. It's akin to watersheds. Okay, this is a fantastically successful conservation of water resources, is the concept of a watershed. And we can learn a lot from borrowing it for night skies. So tie these all together. If you're giving a talk about lighting and your icon is a firefly, your conclusion should be, and if we do all of these things, your grandchildren can continue to catch fireflies in the backyard. All right? It's important that people understand how their piece fits into the larger whole. That's part of the identity. Okay, so I mentioned sky sheds. I think there can be an excellent platform for your vision. The idea of a sky shed is that everyone is downstream and upstream of someone else, right? There's a cause and effect relationship across the landscape. There's a geographic affinity across this landscape. Two people who just meet and don't know each other, but they're both from Michigan, are all of a sudden drawn together because they have that geographic affinity. And they pull out their hand, they're like, oh, I live right here in Michigan. Oh, I live right here. They're excited about it. And I think the sky shed can do that as well. And then think about the sky shed in terms of a continuum from light to dark, or a continuum from local to regional. All right? So there's a couple different ways to think about sky sheds. You can think about them as light-based. All right? So here we have a model of light pollution across the West. And what I've roughly drawn in here is the landscape where Las Vegas is the dominant light source. Okay, so this is sort of a way of looking like we're going to triangulate on the light source, and we're going to think about that. Okay, you can also do this dark-based, where I'm not interested in the light source isn't the focus. The focus is the charismatic landscape. What is the natural area, and what is affecting that natural area? And then you end up with multiple cities ringing it, and so you're basically inverting your sky shed. Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative, it's a sky shed. So we're already doing this. And so I mentioned this concept of a continuum of connection. And I think this is important for us to understand from a strategic point of view. If you put everything on a number line of Bortle 1 to Bortle 9, and look at the kind of actions you would have here, they differ depending on where you are. And I want to present the idea that they all fit together. Okay, so you may be talking about like neighborly friendly lighting in a more suburban type environment. In sort of a more rural environment, it's a great opportunity to do full moon hikes or wildlife walks. It doesn't have to be terribly dark. We have all of these tools and concepts now available to us that cover the continuum from light to dark. And these all need to be integrated. So now we're going to move from celebrating the night to protecting the night. So here are 4 things that I suggest are key here. Number 1, understanding the causes of light pollution. You need to track it, you need to inventory your lights, you need to track the light pollution, and you need to understand what light pollution is affecting. And you say, wait a minute, Chad, you've mentioned measuring light pollution twice. It was in the other one and now it's here as well. That's exactly right. So measuring what's out there is critical for both motivation and for action. These can be simple, right? Globe at night, bioblitzes, sea turtle light pollution monitoring. I mean, all these are very simple ways that you can track. And particularly in the early stages of an effort, this is more than adequate. It has the advantage that any citizen science activity is also a motivating factor in itself. As we discuss things like relamping all the streetlights in a city, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars. And our monitoring efforts need to consequently be more sophisticated, be more precise, be more comprehensive. You know, and these fantastic tools that we have now can do a lot to easily communicate. I mean, these are not only rich data sources, they are images that are easily understood. Number 2, access to technical expertise. All right, this has been an important role for IDA, is to collect, point towards technical expertise, whether that's technical expertise of people or guidance documents. Sometimes our guidance documents are slow. They can be 1 or 2 years behind, just in terms of time it takes to produce them and agree upon them. So in the meantime, use specialists. Some of your most cutting-edge statements are from your technical specialists. Number 3, a rapid cycle of success, and thanks to sort of Mike Wiesner for pointing this one out. And I think this is really true, is all that you can do with direct action. All right, so you can go directly to a supportive citizen and have them change their light, a supportive electrical professional and change the street lights. So the idea is we want to do something quick, we want to do a variety of things, and then we can quickly turn around and say, this is what good lighting looks like. That can be sort of part of your motivational process. So you want to balance like this large top-down approach with this rapid prototyping or piloting. All right, so there are just some examples of each there. Pros, right? So your piloting is going to be really rapid and innovative and probably less expensive. You do still need startup funding, but what happens if that one person leaves? You kind of have to start over. All right, so top-down planning can be really effective. All right, it's lasting, it's comprehensive, but it's a slow process. And you can lose a lot of ground while you're waiting for that to take effect. So these are just like the continuum between light, bright areas and dark areas. We sort of need to balance these 2 aspects. And then number 4 is really simple. It's the wash, rinse, repeat aspect. This is closing the loop. So you want to make sure that your actions involve a broad constituency, that you have a really good communication plan. And let me say something about both of those. You know, that Malcolm Gladwell talked about the tipping point and why society changes all of a sudden in mindset. And he makes the point that you don't need 50% of the people to agree to get to a tipping point. You may only need 5% of the people, 3% of the people. But those people have to be diverse. Those people have to be spread around amongst different enclaves. You can't just have one enclave support what you do and expect any kind of a tipping point. Tout our successes. How many people think that we don't tout our successes enough? Yeah, I think so too. And then finally, like I said, you want to link these actions across the light shed. So, here's to summarize, here's what we have. On the citizen motivation side, are there any of these that really resonate with someone in the office, in the audience? Someone, when one of these came up, did you say, "Oh, that's so true"? I see some nods. Which one? Number 1, number 2, which one? 2, 1, 4. 3. Thank you. 5, we'll get to 5 in a second. What about these conservation actions? Which ones here did people really like? Yeah, I like that. I dig that. 3, 1. I think there's a lot of talks today sort of like on number 1. A lot of our interest is in number 1. Okay. Now the flip side, common pitfalls. I'm going to start this list and you're going to finish it for me. Okay. We heard this yesterday at lunch, right? Logic is necessary, but it isn't sufficient. Okay, so we need to use both intellectual and emotional connections. I have this image from my favorite Montana artist here. You know, if you're giving a talk about the impact of light pollution on birds, like, I mean, to me personally, that image just captures it. I remember that image in my mind long after I've forgotten the figures, the technical information. Diverse community support is important, just as I talked about in terms of reaching the tipping point. All right? Are you being overly negative in your message? Are you talking too much about not light pollution and all the problems and not talking about how we can restore it, how it's 100% recoverable? So, sometimes we don't talk about the sky is half full enough. We talk too much about how it's half empty. Couple more. Relying on we're really apt to rely on external motivators. And we don't realize when we do this sometimes. I used to give talks where I said, and if all the light pollution was fixed, we'd save, $2 billion a year. The United States would save $2 billion a year. That's true, and people are like, oh, well, then the United States is going to take that money and waste it someplace else. I mean, it's not personal, right? They aren't getting $2 billion. So, if you're going to talk about a concept like astrotourism, make it at least regional, if not site-specific. If you're going to talk about a benefit to somebody, talk about it in their neighborhood as much as you can. And studies have shown that like conservation efforts worldwide, whether they're talking about saving gorillas or elephants or ivory trade, it has to do with the personal motivations of people. If you don't establish those personal self-interests, you tend to fizzle out. You tend to get an effort, something signed, and then it just sort of falls flat. And the last point I'm going to make before I ask you common pitfalls is this: if you can't win the battle, endeavor not to lose the war. So I talked about Kanab. When I went in and gave that presentation with Sam Jackson's Cowboy Poetry at Kanab, we were not successful in getting a lighting ordinance. I think there was probably another attempt in there. But in 2018, they passed a lighting ordinance. And I walk here into the conference room and I see this nightscaper ad for a conference in Kanab, Utah. It makes me smile. Okay, so I was talking about the view here, and then there's this nightscaper conference. So it took multiple tries. You may not be successful, but someone is probably going to follow behind you if you lay the proper groundwork and finish what you started. You can lose the battles. You can bring the battles to a draw every time, but you will win the war in the long term. So David took 5 smooth stones One hit its mark, and that's all that was needed. All right, so if I could ask Diana here, let's go. Thanks. I want to ask you guys, common pitfalls. In your experience, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen us make? Strategic mistakes.
Hubris.
Hubris. Tell me more, in one sentence.
Yeah, walking in like you're gonna win.
Okay. I'm so glad it's you up there, not me trying to spell hubris.
Oh yes.
Yeah, back here. All right. All right, being preachy. Another kind of arrogance, perhaps. Other common pitfalls. Yeah, Tim.
Well, it's not exactly a pitfall, but Dave properly used to say the system is binary. It's zero for a long time. If you keep working at one day, it keeps one. It goes over. And I think that's very, very true of the map stories example.
Yeah.
Zero for a long time, but people still worked it, did the right things for a long period of time.
Everyone hear that? Things stay like zero for a long time, and you work and you work and you get discouraged, and all of a sudden it becomes a one. It's binary. And I think they say in conservation that things change less in 10 years than you think they would, and things change more in 20 years than they think they would. I think that's a common saying amongst conservationists. Thank you. Mike.
Overselling something.
Overselling something, like...
So, come out and see the Perseid meteors.
And you'll see 100 an hour.
Exactly. Believe all on Media Hive. And by the way, there's a full moon. That will turn off
Thanks.
more people very quickly.
Yeah, Leo.
Not including the fact that proper lighting has no additional cost.
Okay. Proper lighting has no additional, so not talking about the personal economic advantages enough. Yeah, so relying too much on, I think we got that concept in Jess's talk about how some political persuasions put a lot of emphasis on sort of care of the whole, and our messages tend to make that error as opposed to focus more on what personally affects people. In the back. Not building a coalition of diverse supporters. That's excellent. Over on the other side.
Not anticipating the consequences of your successes.
Oh, surprised by success. Tell me more, Kirk.
We designated a dark sky sanctuary out of a WSA. Now there's thousands of people trying to get into it, not understanding it is protected from driving in.
Right, so wilderness study area was made at Dark Sky Park and everyone wants to go there and you have wilderness conflict. That's an interesting, that's a happy problem, I think, but a problem nonetheless.
Well, Kurt over here figured that one out, so give me some guidelines at the top yet.
Yeah. Okay, radar.
Not talking enough about the value of light.
The value of light, so the positive things we get from light and how to use that light judiciously.
So they don't, visitors and things don't think we're just a bunch of weird people who like to be in the dark.
The dark side, exactly. Right, so it's another way to phrase that is like, be cautious of the false dichotomy we create.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And a corollary is underestimating people's innate fear of the dark and the coupling, emotional coupling of light and safety.
Excellent. Innate fear of the dark. Yeah.
We all like to talk to people who agree with us. Sometimes those are the only people we talk to, and that's a mistake.
Yeah, it's another addition to that building a broad coalition. I'm going to go back here. Yeah.
Migratory birds or something, but not putting it all together as some value.
Yeah, compartmentalizing the benefits. That's a really good point. Yeah. Talk about everything.
Sky shed.
The sky shed concept.
Then you reach more.
And Dan, you got something while we're here?
Well, we do that as a communication tool, right? And you talk about nature deficit syndrome, and you can make the point that the natural night sky will help overcome nature deficit syndrome, but people don't relate to that quite as quickly as these departments.
Yeah, so a bit more nuance with that in terms of how you order the communication from maybe connecting with someone over a specific topic, but then making sure to broaden it out so people understand. Yeah, reach more. Yeah. Yeah, important nuance. I'm going to get just a couple more. Pete.
Being convinced that locals will be more respectful of experts that are far away.
So that's a little bit of the hubris. I'm marching my expert into your town council meeting who's going to tell you what's what.
In those situations, it's far more impactful for the locals to do it on their own, where they are, instead of saying, well, we've got the experts on this, so they know their stuff. Usually we're on the street on the experts and say it's not good. But locals in the area get involved, it's more impactful. We want to assist local people to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of an interesting spin on the hubris angle.
Some cases, like teenagers don't listen to their parents, but you bring somebody in from, in our case, like McDonald Observatory, and everybody listens.
Yeah, so that's two sides of the same coin, right? So that works for some audiences, but not for others. Just a couple more. Let me go Jack and then Stephen.
I just want to quickly get the case. I'm very conscious of that I'm from someplace else, because when our city started, we had a controversy and we had people from 50 miles away showing up to testify, and one of our city council people had to say, I want to hear somebody from our city.
Yeah. And Dr. Dark.
I think not appreciating the pushback you're going to get from the local lighting engineers. You get it when they challenge you on the technical stuff, like uniformity thing. They're going to try and trap you into the technical that should show you don't know anything. And they're going to show up at the meetings, so you got to be ready for that.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone heard that, but you're going to get challenged by the town engineers. If you don't have them bought in going into your presentations, they're going to be on the opposite side. And that can be formidable. I have experienced that as well. So, wow, this is great. Amanda, I have like 2 more minutes? 3 more minutes? Okay, I want to switch, go ahead and, I want to switch gears and talk about the big picture. So, I came up with these 4 key ingredients, right? That if you don't have these, I'm suggesting that things don't go well in the long term. Does anyone have any strong reactions to adding something here or subtracting something? Can someone tell me what I got wrong? Or a modification of something that's up here?
One over here said number 5.
Yeah, so what's the... You had something. Go ahead.
Call me out.
No,
One thing I was thinking of is a lot of this is focused on connecting people with the night sky, but we're connecting with people who don't really care about the night sky, but from the perspective of like pleasant outdoor lighting at night or that type of issues and how we connect with people who just really aren't interested in that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think this framework is probably a little light on just the good neighbor lighting concept of like, hey, I just don't want it in my bedroom window. That's all I care about. I want to fix that and move on. Am I getting that right? Yeah, so maybe something in here needs tweaking for just sort of the lighting aspect. Yeah.
I think we assume light pollution is a problem, and I think we have to convince people that light pollution is a problem. So understanding the causes of light pollution doesn't mean a thing if you don't think light pollution is a problem. A lot of people think more light the better.
Yeah, hopefully we've covered in the show the effect. Hopefully we've talked about the negative aspects of it. But yeah, I had someone tell me once that when I'm driving home late and I see that glow, I know I'm 20 minutes from my warm bed and my wife, and that makes me happy. And I'd hate for that glow to go away. I don't have a good answer for that. In the back.
So you've listed the kind of strategic plan, if you will, or the strategic points in my head. What I think would make, what I think I'd like to see as well is, for each of these strategies, what are the tactical things you do on a day-to-day, weekly, or monthly basis, and how all that ties into the overall. Because if you try to think of, supposing I'm doing a talk, and I know what the audience is, maybe I don't want to take all these points. I just want to take 2 or 3 points.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, this is, well, it would be quite a meal for someone to consume all of this in one presentation. So, Ruskin, next AGM, we need a tactical discussion as well. So, the point is well taken. Like, what are your...
Many people have lots of different ideas, and you do 5 different things, but if you just tie into one of these or an overall goal, it's 5 random things you did, and people are impressed when you do it, but when they go home, they don't know which one to do and where it's complete.
Right. An interpreter might say a cohesive development of a relevant idea needs to be made that's tactical. Yeah.
I don't think anybody has mentioned the fact that I think any solution has a much greater chance of being successful if you point out to people, if you personalize it for them. This has this benefit for you, not this benefit for this world or what.
Yeah.
That your do this, whatever.
Yeah, so this structure needs to emphasize the self-interest and make sure that that's absolutely clear. And let me just take 2 more. Go ahead, and then we'll do one.
So much a little bit related to what you just said, just in terms of it's important to connect people, but it's important to understand who you're connecting. So what's the context of your community or wherever you're trying to make change, and who are the people, what's their motivation, and what's their value system?
Yeah, and that connect people, there's a whole ball of wax that's in that one little statement there. Yeah, you're right. There's so much in terms of reading your audience and understanding your community. And let me end with Dan. Go ahead.
Well, might be a little political, but I think local people should have more control over what amount and type of light they want. They don't really want the IDA or the IES or some lighting engineer from big city to tell them what they want. And the only 2, I can think of 2 examples that I've been involved with, the city of Chicago and the city of Flagstaff. The 2 very different approaches to outdoor lighting, because people in Chicago want one thing and people in Flagstaff want the other. And if there's a local community that doesn't want any lighting, they should be allowed to have it. Or there's a local community, they say, okay, we need a lot more lighting because we have some problems, and they should be allowed to have it too. And it's just the way it is. It would be more harmonious.
Yeah, self-determination, and the difference between a brightly lit environment and a dark one. Yeah. Well, it has been, I think I need to wrap up. So it has been my pleasure to stand in front of you today and be part of this this effort to crystallize a strategy here. So With that, I'll let you go to break, and thank you.